name's Rebecca. Jack was my firstborn son. The Sunday was Mother's Day. In the evening I'd spoke to my husband and he said Jack had just popped round with a bunch of flowers. They'd sat and had a beer and he was on his way out. He left our house on his way out. So I said, I'll give him a ring tomorrow and meet up with him tomorrow when I get back from work. That was that. I went to bed, but I was a bit unsettled that evening. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, early hours, I'd just come down the stairs to make myself a drink, and I was on my way back up the stairs, and I heard this banging on the door. Anyway, and I could hear shouting, and it was my husband's voice. I was like, what? I walked down the stairs, and then through the glass doors, I could see blue flashing lights. So I knew immediately something was wrong. I opened the door, my husband was crying. He put his arms around me and he said, it's Jack, he's dead. And then in walked the police officer and they said, we're sorry to say that Jack, your son, has been in an incident and he hasn't made it, he's dead.
I'm Stephen Story, I'm a detective constable in the major crime team, and in the Jack Howes murder case I was the officer in the case. The night Jack lost his life he'd met up with two men who were known to him. He had met them before, but on this occasion there was an altercation and one of these men pulled a knife out on Jack. That was a lock knife that was available in a high street store. Jack was stabbed to the chest area but managed to run away. It was a wet night and unfortunately Jack slipped to the ground. The two men caught up with Jack and he did try and fend them off, and he was stabbed again. He ran from these men, but this second one was very severe and he collapsed just up the street. Despite the efforts of members of the public, police officers and then medical staff, Jack died from his injuries a short time later.
My name's Ben Wigg. I'm a police officer in Humberside Police. I've been in the job for 7 years now, full-time, and 3 years as a special constable before that. Initially, when we first arrived, he was still breathing, his eyes were open, although he wasn't particularly responsive. So you have that sort of moment of hope of, well, it might not actually be as bad as what you think it is. But then very quickly he deteriorated to the point that we just had to start CPR. There's an overwhelming amount of things that go through your mind. Ultimately, the primary role of a police officer is to save life. So that is the most important thing that you're trying to remember. But you're thinking about all sorts. Are the suspects still on scene? Are they still there with weapons? How many of them are there? Things like that. Is it going to be safe to approach? Because we need to get ambulance in there as soon as possible. So we need to make the scene safe for them to turn up as well.
All I said to them was, I need to see him, take me to see him. So they said, right, we'll take you back to Grimsby Hospital. So we got into the police car with my husband and the police officers. And that 50-minute journey was the worst journey for a mother to endure, knowing. All I kept saying was, I just need to see him. I need to hold my son. I need to see my boy. That's all that was going through my mind. We got to the hospital. We walked through this corridor. A nurse met us. She ushered us into a room and she started to say, my mind was just blank what she was saying. I think they were saying what happened, what they did, how they tried to revive him, resuscitate him. And I just said, I need to see him now. Please, can you take me to him? Please, can you take me to him? No, sorry, you can't see him. Why can't I see him? He's my boy. I need to hold my boy. I need to see my boy. It was murder. I couldn't see him. So I just turned around and said to the police, take me home. So we went home, and then I think it was about 3 days later, he'd been transferred from Grimsby Hospital to the Hull mortuary. I was allowed to go and see him then, and I saw him. He was through a piece of glass, laid on a slab. Looked perfect. There was no marks on his face, nothing on his hands. just there he was. It took them about 4 weeks because they had to do all the post-mortems, and then it was a bank holiday, so it was about 4 weeks until he was released to the funeral parlour. They called me when he arrived. I said, right, she said, he's ready, he's all right, I'm coming now. She went, okay. So I got there, she went, look, Becky, I'm afraid it's been that long, his face has gone. We've covered it up because we don't want you to see it, it's that upsetting.
The training that we get as police officers, no matter how good it is, and no matter how many role play scenarios you run through, no matter how much legislation you're taught, nothing will ever actually prepare you for being exposed to those sort of incidents. And the only way that you will ever be able to deal with them is by going to them and being exposed to them. Because, you know, if you've never dealt with that sort of thing before, you can just turn up and go into a state of shock yourself. Or your adrenaline can get the better of you, things like that. So you just have to try and keep a lid on your own emotions and your own sort of thoughts and feelings about it, and just try and go through the processes that you know you've got to go through. To end up in a position where you feel like you've got to use a knife and to take somebody's life, it's such a huge thing, and it's just not worth it.
When dealing with the death of someone who has lost their life to a knife, it's particularly sad because it's something that could so easily have been avoided simply by not carrying a knife in the first place. So many murders committed by people who carry knives happen in the spur of the moment, and it's often over something so petty. And when someone loses their life in a situation like that, it can be hard to make sense of. And of course it's devastating for the loved ones who have to try and live with that loss forever.
My life's not my life anymore. People say it gets easier, but it hasn't got any easier. It's got harder. The first few months it was just shock, and now it's the grief, and the grief is just unbearable, the pain. I never believed in a broken heart, but my heart is literally broken. I've lost my boy. He was a good boy. He had a brilliant job. He was well known throughout the town. He was a very good established roofer. He used to say that his roofing was an art form for him. He was always happiest on a roof. I don't know. Such an evil, evil way. Be stabbed, and then you have to go through the trial, and you hear that them saying lies and watching over. I watched over and over again the CCTV footage of them stabbing him, and then him running off holding his side, and then he collapsed to the floor and he was dead within minutes. He'd lost so much blood. All I wanted to do was cuddle my boy, and I couldn't see his face. Nothing. I just had to hold his cold, hard hands, walking into the funeral parlour and seeing your baby lying in a coffin. No parent should be able to go through that. No one.
Knives are so easily available, and the use of knives in violent crime, whether that's to commit robbery or murder, are way too common and by far one of the biggest causes of homicide in the UK. If you do get involved in a situation that results in an argument, think twice about where the situation could lead. The use of a knife can cause someone's death so easily, and often this won't be the intention. The consequence for the victim are too often fatal. If it's you that uses that knife, then the result will almost certainly be a life sentence. So stop and ask yourself, what is the point?